Mr. Commissiong has served as a CEO and a director of Amarantus since April of 2011. On October 23, 2011, Mr. Commissiong was appointed to serve as president and CEO. Mr. Commissiong was the co-founder and original president and CEO of Amarantus, which was formerly known as CNS Protein Therapeutics, Inc. Mr. Commissiong?
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending. It's interesting. I was in the hallways at the conference talking to people about what Amarantus did, and in talking about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, there's always a personal story that people have with these diseases, whether it be a grandmother, a loved one, some kind of other family member that they've seen go through the terrible process that just happens over and over and over to millions of people, both in the US and outside. And to a large extent, I think that's what keeps me going, as you know, through the tough times when you're trying to build a company, knowing that at the end of the day, we can make a big difference. So to talk a little bit about the business of Amarantus, we're really developing diagnostics and protein therapeutics for diseases associated with apoptosis. Very specifically, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are our lead applications. We've raised in excess of $7 million to date in a myriad of fashions over the last several years. We have a fair number of shares outstanding, about a $15 million market cap, and we trade very good volume. Now let's talk about the fundamentals of the company. We have two primary lead technologies, one in the therapeutic space, MAMF, and our lead application in the diagnostic space, Limpro. And we're also looking to bring in a secondary therapeutics technology. Limpro is a blood-based diagnostic test for Alzheimer's disease. We think that there's a significant potential in excess of $500 million of revenue for this asset. It's really being focused to develop for early stage Alzheimer's disease. That's where the clear unmet medical need is, where you actually have an opportunity to use drugs that are currently in development to potentially slow and reverse the progression of AD. And we expect to commercialize this in 2014. MAMF is a potential curative treatment for Parkinson's. The mechanism of action of this molecule is really neurite outgrowth in the various animal models that we've looked into. The revenue potential in Parkinson's is in excess of $1 billion. We believe the applications outside of Parkinson's, which may come to market sooner, actually get us to over $5 billion in revenue potential for this asset. And the most important thing is that this could treat not only Parkinson's but several other diseases. The asset that we're looking to bring in, we've executed an LOI to bring in a phase 2B ready Parkinson's disease levodopa-induced dyskinesia drug, has significant commercial potential. I can't get into too much detail because that information is confidential. So as far as the milestones and catalysts for the remainder of 2013, as we start to think about the second half of the year as the first half ends up, we recently announced a services agreement with Becton Dickinson to support the development, standardization, and commercialization of our Limpro asset. This is very important, most importantly because one of the key problems in diagnostic development is that the assays are just not reproducible. You get into a position where a small company develops an assay and they really look to tech transfer it out to a larger company, and when that tech transfer process is taking place, you run into a number of hiccups because the standard operating procedures are not crystal clear and the methods are not in place. So we felt as though the best way for us to move forward was to bring in a large player who has a significant amount of expertise and worldwide exposure to get this asset to the next level, both in terms of the robustness of the assay and then most importantly, worldwide distribution. So with this asset, we have analytical performance data that should be available later on in the third quarter, and followed up by clinical performance data to verify the published literature by the end of the year. And we expect to commercialize this, as I said, in 2014 following a clinical utility study. For MAMF, We're in the process of completing a drug delivery partnership with a convection-enhanced delivery specialist to really be able to get MANF to where it needs to go in the brain for Parkinson's. That should be done in the third quarter of this year. We expect preliminary tox data in the form of PK/PD, where we're going to be pushing doses to look for dose-limiting toxicities. And we expect to have data in myocardial infarction, diabetes, and TBI later on in the second half of 2013. But we've already received initial data in our orphan program, which we're now confirming, and we're very excited by what we've seen. So we really think our orphan program is making significant progress. As far as the asset for in-license, as I indicated, we expect to complete that in the second half of the year, and we'll be initiating a phase 2B in 2014. So just on the pipeline and the history of the pipeline, we brought in the Limpro asset originally from the University of Leipzig in Germany. It's based on the cell cycle hypothesis of Alzheimer's disease. It's been in over 160 patients with in excess of 90% accuracy. We have a blood-based Parkinson's disease test, which we don't talk about much because we're in the process of transferring the platform from a 2D gel platform to a more scalable multiplex ELISA platform, and that's really intended for the early diagnosis of Parkinson's. On the therapeutic side, as I indicated, we're looking for disease modification in Parkinson's and using the unique mechanism of protein folding for other applications. So let's talk a little bit about the need for a blood-based diagnostic test for Alzheimer's disease. There's a significant need because the FDA and obviously many in the community who have been developing drugs for Alzheimer's have found that the drugs that are currently in development don't really work on later stage patients. And as a result of not working on later stage patients, you're in a position where you have to go earlier and earlier in the progression paradigm to see potential benefits. Of course, the problem with this is that it's very difficult to definitively diagnose Alzheimer's early on because it looks and smells and feels like a lot of other diseases, such as frontal lobe dementia, dementia due to Parkinson's disease, and others. So what we're really doing is looking to be able to differentiate in that early stage, MCI, potentially prodromal AD, long before the more severe symptoms of Alzheimer's are present, that you have Alzheimer's and not these other forms of dementia. And so how are we going to do that? The Limpro test is really what we call a predisposition assay. What differentiates Limpro from other more Alzheimer's disease focused tests is that it's really based on a cell cycle hypothesis of Alzheimer's, which says you're predisposed to getting Alzheimer's based on your biology, and then there's some factor that pulls the trigger that initiates the Alzheimer's disease process. So by the time you have dementia, whether it be mild cognitive impairment, which could break into any of the other forms of dementia I indicated before, this predisposition for Alzheimer's is what's going to differentiate you from the other forms of dementia in the earliest stages. And it's really an immune-based test. So what we do is we evaluate the levels of CD69, which is an immune-based marker in the blood of patients with dementia, and only those patients who have Alzheimer's disease will show positive for this because of the immune response associated with Alzheimer's. There's this huge market opportunity here. More than 5 million people in the US have Alzheimer's. There are diagnosed cases of about 400,000 per year, and obviously these are diagnosed later because right now the diagnosis paradigm is such that they can't be definitively diagnosed until later on. What Limpro is going to be able to do is really move this earlier, and this number actually may increase because there are a lot of undiagnosed and misdiagnosed patients in AD. Looking a little bit at the market, obviously 1 in 9 Americans over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's. As we know, the aging population is such that as people get into later stages of life and are able to live longer because drugs and other indications such as cancer are keeping people alive longer, what that in turn means is that more and more people are going to get Alzheimer's. As more and more people get Alzheimer's, the cost to the healthcare system to take care of these people becomes higher. We estimate that that cost will be $1 trillion, $1 trillion by 2050. So this is really one of the biggest risks to the US economy and to most economies, industrialized economies worldwide, is the development of a blood-based test for Alzheimer's that can be easily used and easily detectable in many countries to be able to get people to the stage where you can say, right, you have Alzheimer's very early on in the process. Now you become a candidate to go on certain experimental treatments that other companies are developing, like Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and Johnson & Johnson. At that point, they have a much higher likelihood of success. So we think that once we prove or once we confirm the results of these assays, this becomes a very good partnering candidate with one of these larger companies who have these Alzheimer's programs. Evidence of this is a program by Avid Radiopharmaceuticals, which was bought out by Eli Lilly back in, I think, 2011 for $800 million with $300 million up front. And that is a PET imaging scan to be able to identify levels of beta amyloid in the brain. While that's certainly very effective for diagnosing Alzheimer's, the problem with that is that it's not widely available. PET imaging centers are very costly, about $4,000 between the imaging and the actual drug that's being used to create the fluorescence image, as well as costly and it's time consuming, and they're also not in a very good, they're not broadly distributed. A blood-based test is obviously the best out there that could possibly be, because you can use this in a normal treatment paradigm when you go to the doctor. So you take blood for a number of indications. You can take blood for Alzheimer's, which makes this broadly distributable. The strategy, as I indicated with this, is to establish analytical performance with BD, conduct clinical performance, and then clinical utility, and initiate commercialization 2014. Interestingly, we just held a conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a number of the key players, both on the research side as well as in a number of other areas around traumatic brain injury, where we really looked at mild traumatic brain injury and the potential to lead to chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now, CTE, as that's known, and Alzheimer's disease share a lot of similar characteristics scientifically, and we believe that this assay, because it's a predisposition assay, may also get us to that point. We're in the process of putting together a collaboration to evaluate this with BD, and we tend to be moving this forward in the second half of this year. Initially, it's going to be marketed to KOLs. We're going to be looking through a 510K or PMA pathway and the typical third-party reimbursement, and then partnerships with pharmaceuticals as companion diagnostics. Now let's talk a little bit about our MANF program, which has really been focused on Parkinson's disease over the last several years, but is gaining a lot of traction in other areas, which is very exciting. So as far as Parkinson's, what we've been able to demonstrate in data that we've produced is a superiority to another molecule called GDNF, which was originally developed by Amgen and is now currently developed by a spin-out called MedGenesis. The key is that we've demonstrated a mechanism of action which we believe is superior to that mechanism by being able to reinnervate certain parts of the brain in patients that are further degenerated. From a biological standpoint, beyond Parkinson's, in looking at the underlying biology, we have mitigation of apoptosis. This is widely published. We've seen dopaminergic neurite outgrowth as well. This is published. Autocrine and paracrine cellular roles lead to multiplicity of activities, and there are certain other chemical characteristics of this protein that make it very attractive. Our orphan drug program, as indicated, has shown an initial success, and we'll be updating shareholders on that in the near future. And we are confirming those data before we release the individual data to the public. In TBI, we have some early data with Banyan Biomarkers, who partnered with us on the conference, and we believe that because of new information related to breaching of the blood-brain barrier in TBI, that this opens a window of opportunity to deliver MANF at point of care. From a cardiovascular standpoint, we have published data in models of myocardial infarction, where we've seen a significant reduction in infarct zone size, about 44%. So this is a huge market opportunity in type 2 diabetes. And we have very good patent coverage. We've also won a patent challenge in Europe from one of our competitors. So what does this mean? What this means is that MAMF is a huge opportunity, but obviously it needs to be developed with great care, and it needs to be developed with a real thesis of what comes first, what comes second. Our Parkinson's program has certainly been our lead, but as orphan indications become more viable, as data is produced, it's possible that we'll reshuffle the deck in terms of what comes first and what comes second in our priorities so that we can maximize shareholder value. A little bit about our Parkinson's program, just so that it's very clearly understood how the drug works. In Parkinson's, you basically have a set of cells that are resident in this SNC area that we refer to as the substantia nigra, and they project to an area of the brain called the striatum. In Parkinson's, these cells in the SNC degenerate. So when they degenerate, they retract their axons back from the striatum towards their cell bodies in the nigra. As that happens, you get a loss of dopamine in the striatum, and you get the symptoms of Parkinson's. What MAMF is able to do is we put it back into the brain in the SNC, and it causes the neurons to grow their axons and reconnect in the striatum. This is the first ever growth factor study that's been able to do this. And we're eagerly awaiting other researchers in the field to confirm the data that we've released so far, but we're very excited about the program. So what we've, from a data standpoint, point by point, we've increased the reinnervation of the striatum, as I indicated before. There has been an increase in dopamine concentrations in the striatum. There's been a marked reduce of behavioral deficits in these models, and this is all three of these have been demonstrated to be superior to GDNF. So restoration is really what we're seeking to do, to rescue and cause these cells to become more viable, and so far in all the data we've seen, we're highly encouraged with our results. Going forward, as I indicated, we have a drug delivery partnership with a device maker that we intend to have in the third quarter of this year. We have PK/PD data with dose pushing tox that we expect to get later in the quarter, and we also are going to have some orphan data later this quarter. So it's going to be an exciting quarter. The third quarter is going to be for MAMF. The takeaways are strong data in disease-modifying treatment for Parkinson's. Other indications are available. Huge market opportunities for disease-modifying drugs in Parkinson's, in excess of $1 billion for Parkinson's alone. And with the orphans and other indications, we see revenue potential for MAMF being in excess of $5 billion. A little bit about the drug candidate that we have an LOI on that we're going to be bringing in. It's had positive phase 2 data in about 20 patients with very statistically significant reduction in lid. This is done in 2 clinical sites over 8 weeks. There were no significant adverse events seen, and this drug has been tested in many other areas of CNS, so we know that it's safe for patients. Now it's really all about getting a clinical package together to submit to the FDA. As far as the market size, it's a huge market. We think that adequately priced at about $8 per day in dosing, you can generate $2,500 per year. And because this is the biggest symptom in Parkinson's disease when you take L-DOPA, which all Parkinson's disease patients take, we think this is in excess of a $500 million market opportunity. A little bit about the top-selling drugs. This is certainly fits right in line with what some other drugs in the industry are doing, so we think our revenue expectations are very realistic. So in summary, the management team is myself. I co-founded the company with my father, Dr. John Commissiong, who used to run the neurotrophic factors group at the NIH, from which MAMF was derived, and our CFO, Mark Ferber, who has significant experience in various startup and mid-stage companies. Our board of advisors includes the co-founder of Amgen, the former worldwide head of Alzheimer's biomarker discovery and research at Merck, Adam Simon, and Owen Garrick, who used to run Novartis's M&A group, I believe here in New York. So in summary, we have Limpro test for Alzheimer's disease. It's really preparing for a clinical performance utility study. Next year, we expect to commercialize it. MAMF is a potential disease-modifying treatment for Parkinson's with orphan applications that are coming along very nicely. And we are looking to bring in a phase 2 drug so that we can have now in our pipeline, in our therapeutics division, a phase 2 asset combined with the preclinical platform. And similarly in our diagnostics division, we'll have our phase 2 asset, Limpro, combined with the platform NeuroPro. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.